The goal isn't about getting kids into church. It's about showing up for young people in the community with no strings attached. Welcome to Perspectives, a podcast where the clergy women of the First United Methodist Church of San Diego share their musings on scripture, theology, and what it has to do with us. Welcome to this episode of Perspectives. I'm Reverend Trudy Robinson, and I'm here with Mr. Kenton Reaves Hundley, the director of the Dream School of the Arts. Thank you, Kenton, for being here and talking with me.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. We are in this sermon series we're calling Imago Dei 2.0. And this week, we are diving into a specific demographic in our church's ministry, and that is the people involved in the Dream School of the Arts. And I'm so glad to just have you here to share of your experiences.
I'm glad to be here, and we'll see how it goes.
There you go. Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot more to say than we probably have time to hear. That's always the case on Perspectives. So we're bouncing the idea of the work you're doing with the children and the people involved at Dream School against the prophet Joel and his words. It's from Joel chapter 2, verse 28, and this is God speaking. Then afterward, I will pour my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. I like this passage, and I see this as being something that you do at Dream School. You invite people to dream. Mm-hmm. And that's actually the title of this week's worship experience. And it's Imago Dei 2.0, Celebrating Neighborhood Dreamers. Right?
I think we fit the bill, right?
Do you?
The neighborhood dreamers.
Yeah.
This verse, the scripture verse, speaks to me in a couple different ways. I was thinking about it through the lens of how God has prepared me for the work that I do at Dream School. And a lot of that work, unbeknownst to me at the time, I tell people a lot, I'm not a big fan of the rapper Drake, but he has a song where he says, the hook is like, God's plan, God's plan. Yeah. And I think about that because in the work that I do at Dream School, even this week I texted my mentor to say thank you for how he showed me how to do the work in community spaces in the past. And at one of the group homes that I taught at years ago, in the concrete was permanently scratched or etched into the concrete a quote from Frederick Douglass. I believe it's from Frederick Douglass that says, "It is easier to build strong children than to let me start that over. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men."
I think that's a beautiful and so true saying.
Mm-hmm. And to me, that fits into the scripture. Because, like you said, we are creating a space for kids to dream, a safe space. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it'll come up later, what that safety looks like to the different students that we have at Dream School. Yeah. But I think, and you and I have talked about this before, once folks come into Dream School and see what's happening, better than seeing what's happening, feel what's happening in Dream School, I think it does go back to this, to where the kids feel that, okay, I can grow here. Yeah. I can be silly without getting in trouble. Yeah. I shared with someone recently in a poem I wrote recently, the kids don't get in trouble, they get redirected at Dream School. And I think that says a lot. Yeah. This verse, where's the part that says, your sons and daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. Mm-hmm. For you and I, going back to 2020, it definitely was a vision. Yeah. Everything in 2020 was a vision, right?
Exactly.
But I think it's somewhat comical. You and I know the story of, are you sitting down? Yes, what's going on? But the idea...
That was my first push towards...
That's when we first got to know each other, right?
Shall we do something really different here? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I remember
Dream School was the result.
Yeah, and I remember you said, we'll just call it Dream School for now.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I don't even know if you knew me well enough at the time to understand or to know that Dr. King is such a big part of who I am, his work and his legacy. So to have it called Dream School, have that name stick, to call our little kids dreamers, and then to have the kids come in there and like, well, like we had a new boy start this week. He's like, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to do? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's free art time. I can draw. You can paint. You can do this, that, the other. And, you know, we don't know this guy. And the second drawing he gave me was of Spain winning the World Cup. Right, and so of course it touched my heart immediately. Soccer, Mr. Kenton. Here's a present for you.
There you go.
But the other thing he drew,
and he had a little bit of prophetic knowledge on that because they did.
It was the day after.
Oh, okay. So he knew that. Okay.
But I think the prophetic knowledge for this little guy
I was trying to make the scripture come true.
Well,
right?
wait for it.
Okay.
Not particularly this one, but he drew a fish.
Okay.
And I was like, "What is this?" He's like, "Well, I love to fish with my grandpa." And to him, it's just a fish. Right, this very detailed fish. But to Miss Cindy and I, it was, oh, wow. This guy's talking about fish. And I thought, fisher of men, fisher of dreams, fisher of hope.
The symbol that was used for the early Christians was fish,
And in that same day, with somebody else, staff or volunteer, I don't recall who, but I said, you know what, we are in the business of, or how do I say it? You shouldn't have to know my denomination or my faith background if you can see what I'm doing, if you can see what we're doing, right? And in that same vein, it was grandma comes to pick the new kid up, how'd it go, and she meets Brian, she meets Cindy, she meets everybody, and it's like, God bless you all, out of her mouth, immediately.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen all the time,
right?
But back to this, I think that we have all been tasked with sharing this vision and inviting these kids to dream. So then and I tell the kids all the time, when you're old like Mr. K, you can dream. What might your after school program, enrichment program look like if you dream? If it's a safe space, right? I think if we can build these kids up now, then they'll be less likely to be broken adults. Or if they are broken adults, because we all go through those things, they'll have some form of creativity or knowing that their creative expression or their choice of healthy food and or the desire to exercise can ground us and bring us back into alignment, if you will, to understand God's plan, right? That God has something bigger than us than just this moment of strife or of struggle. And so, I think
and
that's
all of those things are within their control to a certain extent, right? But it's not dependent on a job that they have or how they're doing in school. It's all about what they can succeed at, and it just gives them many more options for feeling that success, right? I
think that summarizes it to, again, you're not going to get in trouble. Of course, there's things you can't do at Dream School, but we have 3 rules: be safe, be respectful, be responsible. And we tell the kids, anything that you think is not safe, respectful, responsible, you probably shouldn't do it. If you're not sure, ask an adult, right?
So smart.
Try to keep it simple.
Yeah, so smart. You mentioned the vision that we put out there, I guess, as to what that could be. I just kind of said, what do you think? And he ran with it, and it's been amazing to see. There you go. But I have to say, part of this really was foreshadowing the rewilding that we have done at the church, that long visioning process that has brought to us some of the more successful elements of our ministry these days. But for me, I was aware that it's hard for families to come to church on Sunday morning every single week. And it's hard to build relationships or to plan or to sustain a kind of a typical Sunday school program with that kind of fluctuation, right? So I was aware that we needed to be doing something different in our children's ministry somehow when this opportunity came to us in 2020. And not just that, but the idea that I had always kind of thought, I worked with kind of a pessimist in my previous church who used to say, well, the church is going to be dead in 15 years anyway, which, hopefully not. Right. But I knew that there was changes happening that we didn't know exactly where the church was going. And so I knew that, when in that church and then in this instance, I knew that if we are doing what we're supposed to be doing in serving people beyond the walls of the church can die. and we'll be okay. You know what I mean? All of that is to say, this is different than your former role here. And you have had a great long learning curve, and this isn't Sunday school. What are the differences? How do you see what you're doing at the Dream School as both maybe a new challenge, but also a continuity of what you might have been doing here?
I think, it's definitely different than Sunday school.
Yeah.
At a concrete level, it's a different type of preparation.
Okay.
When I was the director of discipleship for First Church, it was a lot of not having a theological background, but growing up in the Episcopal Church, which is very similar in many facets to the Methodist Church. But I think the preparation for Sunday morning, a time with children, lessons for kids first, K through 5. Students first, 6 through 12, and even some of the work I was doing with college-age kids pre-pandemic. For me, a lot of that work was, okay, what's the scripture lesson for Sunday morning? How do I interpret it? And how do I break it down for children, right? We have, we had the books, we had the workbooks and all that stuff. But for me, it's always been, what is something tangible?
Yeah.
Right? So if the kids get in the car with mom and dad after church, what'd you do at Sunday school today?
Right.
My hope was always they could talk about whatever the scripture lesson was from a child's perspective, and whether it's just showing what we colored today or the poetry worked on or like some type of drama.
Right.
And then the adults, parents or grandparents could talk about whatever the sermon was and hopefully meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So the preparation.
Look at you doing that intergenerational connection.
That's what I like to do, right? As my kids used to say, Daddy's old lady friends at church is what Maya and JD used to say a lot. But I think that shift is, and now it's a daily preparation, right?
Okay,
It's Monday through Thursday. Monday through Friday work with the kids is Monday through Thursday. But I think also I don't lean on scripture, obviously, because we're not doing church work at Dream School.
Right.
But I'm able to take, it's almost to an extent a reverse, right? So now I take the Sunday morning message, whether I'm here in person or watching online, and how do I have that guide me through the work week, right?
Okay.
I think the other way, again, I said this a little bit about this before, but people watching the work that we do at Dream School, they don't have to know if I'm a Christian, Muslim, whatever. I'm doing God's work, right?
Exactly.
And the kids recognize that. They might not name it, but it feels good. Something about this place feels good.
Yeah.
I'm eating good. I'm exercising. I'm painting. I'm getting messy. I'm not getting in trouble. I'm not being told what I have to do and when. And then many folks in First Church will remember Phil Emerson. And one of the things that he shared with me years ago was some form of this. You can tell if an event was successful if there's laughter and lingering.
I like that.
And the end of summer session week 2, a new little girl said to her mom, I don't want to go at pickup time. And Cindy's like, you got to go. And she's like, Mom, I don't want to go. Well, you'll be back tomorrow.
I love that.
And she brought her cousin back on day 2. And so now the two of them are talking about coming back in the fall.
Oh, wonderful.
Right? And again, it's the culture that we create where everyone is welcomed. Giving leadership roles to the kids who've been there for a while, like, hey, Savannah, you've been here 2 summers now. I need you to give a tour to these adults that are coming to visit, right? And so they're learning leadership skills. We have a wonderful relationship with local high schools, where high school kids are coming in and learning leadership skills, developing those skills, getting out of their comfort zone. A lot of people think they want to work with kids and realize, ooh, this is way more than I signed up for. Because they talk back. They make jokes that may be inappropriate or might hurt your feelings if you're not a little flexible with it. But at the end of the day, the culture that we've created at Dream School of love and acceptance and everybody's included, it's not a competition. That's really hard. This summer we have more little boys than we've ever had. And so the energy up in there is different. And sometimes you forget that little boys can roughhouse, right? But it's a simple, again, you're not in trouble. Like, hey, we don't make guns out of Legos here.
Right.
Oh, well, okay. Well, how can you do that non-violently? Oh, okay. And so then that gun, our plowshares are changed, right? Our weapons are changed, and then like even today, like, hey, you guys pick up those toys. It's almost time for Run Club. She was doing it. Okay, but if we all work together, what happens? Oh yeah. Instead of saying, hey, Jason, get over and help, it's like, Jason, you were helping me earlier build this. Can you help me put these away for Mr. Kenton and Miss Cindy? So it's just changing. Like, how do we how do we show compassion and love
Yeah.
as something as simple as picking up
Yeah.
Legos, right?
You know, I love this, and I was curious when you had said that it's kind of a reverse than your role at Sunday school. You're seeing the scripture, and then you're trying to just live in the scripture to convey what it is. But now you are internalizing the scripture so that it comes out not in teaching but in behavior, and culture setting and that kind of thing. And I think that's beautiful. That's what we preachers hope everybody does,
right?
You know, internalize it and then go out and make the world different, right? And for the idea that you are influencing these young people with values that our culture may not always support,
right,
or be the first to teach. It just makes me so happy. It really does. It just makes me very happy.
And I hope it makes everyone who experiences
Yeah.
Dream School happy. The parents, the old parents that are crying to say, "Oh, my kids, exiting out of Dream School, they're going to middle school now."
Yeah.
I mean, the new parents like, all this is free.
Yeah.
And all I got to do is drop them off and pick them up on time. That's all we ask, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later. But then they realize it's not just an after-school program.
That's right.
It's a
That's
community
right.
of support for not just the child, but for their family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming back to the scripture, Joel, like all the prophets, were speaking in times of devastation. And for Joel, from what I've read, what was happening in his community was a plague of locusts and a drought that was challenging and leaving devastation, right? And Joel, like all the prophets, the answer is, well, return to God. Now, that's not our theology. We don't think bad things happen because you deserved it or you did something wrong and God is not pleased. But the turning to God and God-like principles is the important thing that we take away from that. But it just makes me wonder. I'm aware that some of the dreamers have some really difficult circumstances, and Dream School is helping. Can you share a little bit about that?
I can try.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that in this world that we live in today, as a collective, we have our own droughts and plagues.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of adults overlook the fact that children are picking up everything we do. I remember years and years ago, in my second classroom ever, a girl asked me, "Why are your shoelaces always tied on the inside of your shoe?" And I'm like, "What?" And I looked back and I was like, "Oh, it's because I get ready in the morning with my little girl on my lap when Maya was a baby."
Yeah.
And so I was tying my shoe and I was like, it just supported that kids observe everything about you, right?
Yeah.
And then with that, children are going to look for someone who makes them feel comfortable. And so I think the diversity of our staff, you mentioned before intergenerational. We call them our golden volunteers, our senior citizens that come in. We have college interns. We have high school interns and volunteers. We had middle school last summer for kids from here at First Church. But I think for a child to be able to look up and not just say, "Oh, when I'm in high school, I want to do what Isla does." And Isla might think, when I'm in college, I want to come back and volunteer at a place like this. And then the college kids or we have a high school volunteer, a recent graduate from the Preuss School, who will be attending UCSD in the fall, who said she's going to study education sciences because of her experience with me and Miss Cindy last summer, right?
Nice.
But to bring it back to the children that you mentioned, I think, we have a kid, and I don't want to be too specific, but whose family was going through a heavyweight divorce. And both parents came and spoke to us ahead of the child. Texted me on a Sunday evening, "Hey, we let so-and-so know what's going on. This is the trajectory we see for mom and dad."
Yeah.
I know I went through that.
Yeah.
My kids went through that.
Yeah.
So I would take time to talk to dad. "Hey, dude, this is what I went through. I'm not telling you how to live your life,
Yeah.
but she's going to have questions.
Yeah.
She's going to be mad at you. She's not going to understand. But as long as you can get here on time, 2:45, Monday through Thursday, we got her. You go relax, Dad." You know,
Yeah.
you go figure out what you got to go figure out. That same family, and you know, as divorce goes, you see things start changing over time. This parent's not dropping off the kid as much anymore.
Right.
Parents don't speak to each other when they're both on site together. And I saw that in my past as a soccer coach, you know, where one parent's way over here, one parent's way over here, and I'm in the middle like, good, you good, y'all good, can we celebrate together? But with this particular family at our end of the year party this past May, both of them thanked me separately. And they thanked me together because their kid has gone through even more changes in terms of identity and self-expression. But the one constant since 2024 has been Dream School. And this same kid would tell Dad, hey, can we move swim practice to Friday this week? Because I want to be here on Thursday. And Dad would tell me, hey, this kid's coming in home and saying, hey, let's shift up the schedule so they can be at Dream School during the week.
Great. Yeah.
Another example of that is... you know, Miss Cindy is a graduate from the Preuss School, which is a 6 through 12 school on UCSD's campus for first-generation students.
Okay.
And it's been important for her to try to guide some of our first-generation students in that same direction. And one family in particular, separate homes, right? Mom is remarried with a new husband and his baby from another relationship, and Dad is with his mom and his sister, right? Dad's a war vet.
Yeah.
Over the course of this past year, trying to get his daughter, Cindy, working to get the daughter into the Preuss School and apply, and Dad was very hesitant and like, I went to this local middle school and I went to Hoover High School.
Yeah.
Why does she have to do anything different?
Yeah.
And for Cindy and I to just kind of sit back and just say, this is what this school offers.
Yeah. Right.
Mom is gung-ho like, I'm going to put my kid in this school and she's going to have all the opportunities like you guys did. And Dad was very reluctant. And then little by little, this was started in September of last year. In May, as we were cleaning up after our end of the year party, I overheard him talking to Cindy. And I just kind of, you know, I'm over here like cleaning up the trash and stuff, and I'm listening. And I said, hey, this is a good time for me to step in and say, he's like, hey, Ken, I'm sorry, I told you I was going to do the 5K in January. I didn't, but dude, you know, I got bad hips, I got a bad back, I have surgery, this, that, and the other. I don't go to the VA because I don't want them to give me drugs, and I don't want to be like these other guys that become addicts and da-da-da. And I was like, you know what? I know a guy. And that sounds cliche, right? but one of my gifts is being a community builder.
Yeah.
And being able to say, okay, I know somebody here who does this and does that. And to connect him, or to try to connect him, do my part, to connect him with one of our Stevens ministers, who's also a vet, who's also worked with guys working on that transition back into society. So that was in May. And then just last week, the dad came in and he's like, hey, Kenton, I got your text. Thanks for trying to connect me with so-and-so. But I'm just not ready. And I was like, dude, that's okay. Yeah. I'm just offering you, I told you, it's more than an after-school program. It's a community center.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, can I talk to you for a second? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you know, when I was in Afghanistan, I saw this, I saw that, I saw the third, I had a gun in my mouth. All these things that he would never say in front of his kid.
Yeah.
And I was like, but look, you're here.
Yeah.
That's what's important.
And he said them to you. Yeah.
And you're trusting your kid with, and I said, so when you're ready to reach out to my buddy, reach out to him.
Yeah.
That'll be there.
Yeah.
He's like, dang, man. And I was like, I'm old. And I was like, I know people that were in Iraq. I know people that were in Afghanistan. So you're not the first vet that I've heard about the difficulties in transitioning back to at-home life. Yeah. And I was like, so whatever I can do to help you and your family out, bro, I got you.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me kind of in disbelief. Can I give you a hug, Kenton? And I was like, yeah. And his daughter's like, you know, she's going to 6th grade. She's like, that's weird. Yeah. Right? But she has no idea what our conversations are about. Yeah. Excuse me. He does. Now you do. Right? Yeah. But again, that goes to show what the space is, how my work is different. Right. You know? Prior to working at First Church, I taught undocumented minors. And I didn't have relationships with parents. And so my work here at the church, even that was different in terms of, I like to say, you know, most families are on their best behavior on Sunday morning, right? Yeah, yeah. But during the school week, things get messy. You know, I have texted parents like, hey, it's 6:30, where you at? I forgot my kid. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Like, take your time. We're here. Right. Don't race down Adams Avenue. Don't race on the freeway. We're here, right? But then understanding the nuances within those families and how Dream School can support the child after school or now in the summertime, and then how can we support the family, whether that's looking for the best school option, public school option, helping a vet, you know, helping someone who wants to get into their fitness journey and introducing to Coach John or myself, all these different angles that we can offer. I have a woman who's going to be teaching nutrition classes to adults starting in September out of Dream School. All these things, again, I think, again, God's plan, you know, and I had no idea whatever, 22 years ago that I would be doing this work. But I also think back to when I was in a classroom teaching, and one of my buddies would be like, my teaching partner, Chris, would be like, man, if we had our own school, we wouldn't have to worry about any of these people. And now I do.
And now you do.
And I get to have that freedom of creativity, and curriculum design. I get to invite, the neuroscience department from USD over to Dream School and have tangible brains for our kids to touch. Or for our kids to say, hey, that lady's a scientist?
Yes.
What do I have to do to be a scientist?
Yes.
Talk to that lady.
Yeah.
See what it's about, right?
Yeah.
And so those are some of the differences between working as a youth minister versus working out in the community, but still working with children, pouring my love, my team's love into these kids to where they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with all this love.
And allowing for whatever they're going through to be part of the conversation, it's a ministry, really.
It definitely is.
It's a ministry, and it is without ever talking about Scripture, without ever making them listen to a sermon. It's powerful in that way. And what you're doing, bringing it back to Joel, you people can't dream if they're not safe, if their needs aren't met, if they aren't able to feel comfort in these times of devastation. Yeah, and so you're creating this safety in this community center really is creating dreamers.
And not just little kid dreamers.
That's right.
We have plans for a chess club.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But that comes from the loss of a friend who was doing this similar type of work up in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And they had a chess club for kids up there.
Yeah.
And so to honor him for his birthday in August, we're looking to do a chess club for kids.
I love it.
And again, it's just something different.
Yeah.
It's a safe space.
Yeah. Are you talking to the kids about your friend that had passed away?
Because some of them met him.
Okay.
And so that's something else different from my previous work and not having a relationship with parents at the group home.
Right.
Like working in a group home, the kid might get a phone call and be crying all night.
Yeah.
Oh, my tío passed away in the fields in Guatemala or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you help a kid mourn in a group home when they have to be here, there, all these things on time? Versus when my friend Scribe passed away and the family that was at the 5K that heard him speak at our art exhibit, our art auction at the MLK Gospel Choir event here, saying, hey, to the mom, hey, is it okay if I talk to your kid about death? Kenton, I trust you. Go ahead. Yeah. And so being able to talk to this child about it, and then I'm going to laugh because we laugh to keep from crying, right? But another little kid saying, wait, your friend died? Kids are rough around the edges, right? And the other kid's like, you don't have to say it like that, dude. But meeting them where they're at. Yeah. And if this kid is not coming from a background where it's okay to talk about death and doesn't know how, it is awkward. What do you mean that man I just met in January died? Yeah. But being able to have those conversations. Yeah. How did he die? Ooh, that's heavy, right? Yeah, but here's his legacy. Right. Here's what we're going to do. Our run club, we're going to run just like he was running. And
I'm sure that it's not just it's not a theoretical conversation because they met him, but I think they're also probably watching you deal with it in a way that's appropriate for children to watch you, and in a way that makes them remember, so that when something devastating like that happens to them, they will know how to be safe in the midst of that.
And through that, me sharing my painting, which is therapeutic for me. Okay. Poetry and painting is therapeutic for me. Yeah. So inviting those kids who met him, hey, will you help me do this part of this painting? Yeah. What do you think I should put here? Oh, he would love that. Hey, Mr. K, did you finish yet? Yeah. And so now it's a collective celebration rather than a individual mourning. Yeah. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so to be able to invite his peers to the memorial service here in San Diego and, hey, come over, hang out at Dream School. We're going to do a run in his honor. Yeah. And me being surprised at how many people showed up for that. Yeah. And I hear my friend's voice like, Kenton, just open up the space. You don't have to do anything. Just open up the space. Yeah. And sometimes it's as simple as that. And I think that takes us back to April 2020 when you hit me up with this idea of like, are you sitting down? I was thinking we could turn that thrift store into, okay, let's just open up a space. Yeah. And in those reflections, Reverend Trudy, I also consider literally blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
My father passed away before Dream School opened.
Yeah.
So for me, some of the demolition before we hired the contractors was
Yeah.
therapeutic.
Yeah.
You know, there's
I
certain
can
parts of the
imagine
building that
so.
look completely different, but I remember sitting in a chair just bawling
Yeah.
and thinking, all right, Dad,
Yeah.
what's next?
Yeah.
And I can hear my dad's voice, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
when I walk in different parts of Dream School, I can see where my kids' suggestions would be.
Yeah.
Like my 14-year-old was, tiny.
Yeah.
And she suggested beanbags.
Mm-hmm.
But we have these cool little floor level seats that are beanbags that a 7-year-old envisioned.
Would love. Yeah.
And now I got to tell these kids, stop bouncing on those chairs, please. But to a little kid, a 8, 9-year-old, that's fun.
Oh, yeah.
That's a comfortable place to read.
Yeah.
And so as long as we can just open it up
Mm-hmm.
and invite the children and their families in to see and
Yeah.
experience Dream School, goes back to our scripture of
Yeah.
folks, everybody of all ages dreaming dreams.
I love it. Kenton, thank you so much for talking with us. I
course.
know we have a lot more that we could say, but you've given us an awful lot to think about, and I just am in awe of what's happening there, and very, very proud to have called you that one day, and that's about all I have done. So thank you.
No.
I'm proud of you for what you have been growing, and I pray that it's around for a long, long time.
Me too. That's the prayer.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone. We have some questions for you that are related to this topic, and we invite you to find somebody to have conversation with. You can join the group on campus at First Church. It's known as Convergence, the group is. You can find our website and find out more about that if you'd like to join us, or just find somebody to share the podcast with and answer these questions on your own. But these are the ones that you can think about. The first one is, how might you see the dreams of children as revealing the movement of the Spirit? The second, how might a return to God, that being Joel's and all prophets' ready answer, but how might you see a return to God as helpful when devastating events occur? And how might we all best honor and protect children and their dreams? Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. Bye. Thanks, Kenton.
Yeah.
This is a production of First United Methodist Church of San Diego. To learn more about our events and ministries and to access additional learning resources, visit FUMCSD.org.